It is Wednesday, and you all know what that means. It's time for another episode of Life in the Movies podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you all so much for tuning in. It is officially Holy Week, and that means Easter is almost here. And so this week, Jacob and I are going to be reacting to an article from the AV Club called 27 Easter-based entertainments that aren't biblical epics. So this should be very interesting. And we'll also be taking a look at Luke Cage Season 1, Episode 11. But before all that, I have to introduce my co-host, Jacob Martin. Jacob, how are you?
I am doing pretty good. I am really interested in this article for one thing, because you said that they're not going to be biblical epics, so we won't be talking about like the Passion of the Christ or King of Kings or the Ten Commandments or the Prince of Egypt, any of those good movies. Uh, Curious about the quality of some of these movies, or if I've even heard of some of these movies, but I think it's going to be a fun discussion. I'm excited about this week's podcast, and life's been pretty good so far.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit off air. Spring break is just around the corner for you. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. We're having it next week. We're technically done with our classes and final exams for the quarter, but we're helping a local congregation with a door knocking campaign to promote this event that's going to take place on Easter Sunday, this friends and family event. And there's going to be an Easter egg hunt that Saturday at noon. So it's going to be a really exciting event. And it's been a good opportunity for us as students to help grow local congregations.
Well, that sounds great. Well, before we dive into Luke Cage, is there anything that you've been watching lately that you want to discuss?
Yeah, I've watched a little bit of stuff. I finally finished. I finished season one of The Chosen, and that's been a fantastic watch. It's been a great series that's really dived into the early life. I get the early life of Jesus Christ before his ministry was made public. How he recruited what eventually became the 12 disciples, and we get to see even before then people's reactions and their lives before they encountered Jesus Christ, like some of the apostles and Mary Magdalene and even the Pharisee Nicodemus, for example. It's a well crafted series, excellent performances all around, and even the production value in this show is actually really good considering it's independently made and a lot of the budget was done through crowdfunding. I think the show's now in its third season, if I'm not mistaken. I'm excited to check out the other two seasons. If the other two seasons are as consistent as the first, I think it's a contender for one of the best faith based things in anything in the entertainment industry.
I remember hearing about this. Uh, this is actually streaming on the service Canopy, which is through a local library, and I've always been interested to see it, and I've just never really gotten around to it, but I've heard nothing but amazing things. I did hear that it was crowdfunded though, which is very impressive considering that they're 3 seasons deep and there's enough funding through just viewers like us to justify being able to continue on with something like that for that long.
Yeah, I think I've read somewhere they plan on doing eventually 6 seasons of the show because they really want to dive into, I think, the life of Christ. I think up till I think his death, burial, and resurrection. I think, but they've been doing a real good job on that show so far. I am very impressed with what they've been able to do just in its first season.
Yeah, it does sound very impressive, and I do intend on diving into it one of these days because I've always been interested in it. Well,
Yeah. And then some movies that I've recently watched for the first time. There were two 2022 releases I finally checked out on Netflix, and I'll dive into them real quick. First, I checked out The Woman King, which came out in late 2022. Stars people like Viola Davis and Lashana Lynch and John Boyega, among others. It's loosely based on true events about this African tribe and this army of female warriors called the Dormage, I think is how you pronounce their name. And you get to see this elite tribe of warriors in action. I know this tribe of female warriors that exists in real life was the basis of the female soldiers that we saw in the Black Panther movies, which, yeah, it makes sense that they decided to make a movie based on the real tribe because of the success of the Black Panther movies. The movie, I think, did have some controversy. I think there were some that complained about some of the historical inaccuracies, I think, of the movie, and how these characters tied into like controversial events in history, like the slave trade, among others. I don't know much about the real story. I'm just watching it, as the movie as is. But I felt like the movie tackled its subject matter, I thought, pretty well for a movie of this nature. And I still enjoyed the film. For one, on an action level, the action is very well directed. Even with it being PG-13, it still did a good job showing like the brutality of the action, even with that rating. Viola Davis is especially really great in this movie as the head of the army of soldiers. I thought she was terrific in the film. I enjoyed. You really show how she does a great job of selling how much of a beast she is in this character, while also showing a lot of flaws that she has as well because of what happened in her past. Lashana Lynch is really good in this movie, and even John Boyega, who some people kind of dismissed because he was in those Star Wars movies. Pretty good supporting role in this movie. I enjoyed him in that film. All around, it's a pretty good movie. I highly recommend it. It's worth watching on Netflix.
Yeah, this is a tricky one because I didn't see it in theaters, not for any reason other than it was just timing. Like I just couldn't get around to it. It happens sometimes. It is what it is. But shortly afterwards it was the whole like it's not as accurate as you think, which most movies based on true stories, creative license is going to be taken, whether it's a little or it's a lot. Not everything can be like a downfall. The movie about the final days of Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany, or something like a Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. If a story has to take creative license, then that's fine with me as long as the quality is good. So, I mean, I don't understand what people were stressing about. I mean, I guess the subject matter, considering the slave trade thing, sure, I guess, but movies have always, especially true stories, have always taken some sort of creative license. So I sort of get it, but I also sort of don't. It's more complex than people realize, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it's just something, some people tend to dismiss stuff because they assume like the worst of something before they actually see it. But I think if you actually just sit and just take it at face value, I don't see how this is a problem at the end of the day. Because the movie acknowledges that the slave trade is bad. And even though some of these characters had direct involvement in it, at the end of the day, they realize, the wrongs they've done and they're trying to fix it. And I think for a movie of that nature, I think they're trying to do something I think admirable with something that was such a bad event in history.
Yeah, it's a sad part of history, but let's segue away from that. Yeah.
Segue into that, I'm gonna talk the last movie I've recently watched, and that is Where the Crawdads Sing. That's the other movie I watched recently on Netflix. I thought it was shockingly a movie that exceeded my expectations. Like it looked intriguing whenever month the movie came out and we did the preview for it. I was mildly intrigued by it, but I didn't think I was going to be really invested into the movie. The movie has beautiful cinematography. Like I was impressed, especially by the location cinematography in the movie. Like it felt like I was immersed into the world of like the North Carolina marshes that our main character is in. The lead performance, I'm not familiar with Daisy Edgar Jones, but I thought she was terrific as the main girl who's pretty much on her own for most of the movie, and she's trying to survive in the area that she's the most comfortable with, which is the marsh. And even the romance elements of the movie, which that was the aspect I thought was going to be the cringiest because it was based on a novel aimed for women. You know, we've had the Twilight and the 50 Shades of Grey books adapted in the movie, so I thought it was going to be on that level of cringe. But no, even the dialogue in this movie was actually well written. Like, it actually felt like two characters literally talking to each other than the cringe dialogue you see in some of these other movies, which do not feel authentic in any way, even with the quality of the relationships. One's a decent relationship, and another one she's in later on is not that good of a relationship without diving into spoilers if you haven't seen it. But the dialogue in this movie was actually really good. There's also a murder mystery aspect in the film that was actually really engaging. David Strathairn, who's an underrated actor, plays the lawyer character who's defending the main character, and really good performance is to be expected. Pretty good twist as well that I really enjoyed. So this is all around a really good movie. If I was part of your hidden gems show, I would definitely consider this a hidden gem. It's a really good movie, and it's currently streaming on Netflix.
Yeah, I can speak from experience. We've not been able to keep this DVD in the library because it has got reservations out the door. Like people want to see this, and the book as well. It's insanely popular. So this is another one that I definitely missed. Not because I don't like the genre or anything. I'm not saying that. It was just a time thing, like I mentioned. But I have heard nothing but good things, so I should go out of my way and see this.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch.
All right, well, as for me, I've been going through because of Air coming out this weekend. I went through a bit of a Ben Affleck watch, like a Ben Affleck directed by Ben Affleck mood. I watched Gone Baby Gone for the first time. I watched The Town for the first time, and I rewatched Argo. And I love all three, but for different reasons. Uh, Gone Baby Gone is I I saw it like when I posted my review on Twitter, I got a reply saying this was the better Mystic River, and I've not seen Mystic River, but I really did enjoy Gone Baby Gone. It was it was a detective thriller, but it was more complex than that. There's a question involved with the main mystery, and I won't go too deep into spoilers if you all have not seen it, but it's a more complex movie than I was expecting, and I did appreciate that. The Town, I wasn't a humongous fan of. I thought it was really good, but I didn't love it as much as Gone Baby Gone. However, there are parts of it where I was like, okay, that was very impressive. So it was more of a mixed bag than Gone Baby Gone, but at the same time, I when the highs were very high. And as for Argo, I mean, I love that movie. I've loved it ever since I first saw it in theaters. I rewatch it every once in a while, and I didn't watch every Best Picture nom in that year when Argo won, but Argo getting that win I thought was very well deserved. The final scene in the airport, that's just fantastic. That and the Iranians storming the embassy. That whole beginning and end was just riveting. And then you got the middle part of them setting up the movie, like the movie that's not really a movie, and then getting it approved by the CIA. It was just that movie's just awesome. I'm so glad that Ben Affleck is directing things again. I have not seen Live by Night. I will see it eventually. I've heard nothing but bad things, so I'm not exactly looking forward to it, but I like being a completionist, so I will get around to see it one day. It is on HBO Max, so I don't really have an excuse. But if I had to rank them, I'd go Argo is my favorite, Gone Baby Gone close second, and third The Town. But I love all three for different reasons.
Yeah, I've actually seen those three Ben Affleck directed movies. Like you, I haven't seen Live by Night, so I can't comment on that. But the other three movies he directed are all good for various different reasons. this might be a hot take, but my favorite of the three is probably Gone Baby Gone because I had never heard of that movie until I found out Ben Affleck directed it. And this was already having seen his other movies. And I thought he did an incredible job directing that movie. The mystery I thought was very captivating throughout. And the twist was very unexpected. It made me rethink the movie in an entirely different way. And it makes you question the morality of some of the characters that we followed throughout the course of the movie without diving into spoilers. So those are all really good movies, but I think the one that's seriously underrated of the three is Gone Baby Gone.
Yes, I agree. And I love the ending. It like you said, it made me rethink everything when it happened. When a certain thing is realized, you're like, oh. And then I love how the movie doesn't get let you off easy. There's no like tie it up with a bow, let's go home. The ending's kind of messy. And I kind of like that. I like the spirit of that.
Yeah, it was it's a heavier movie than I think most in the genre. There's not really I guess middle ground to the final decision that was made. You're like, was this really the right thing? If if it had stayed the way it was, it would have been worse. Like what where do you draw the line and what happened? That's all I'll say.
Yeah, that's the best way of putting it. And one thing about the town that I loved the line where Ben Affleck walks in and goes to Jeremy Renner, which by the way, this is Jeremy Renner's best performance, and I will not hear anything else about it. He is at his best right here. I believe he was nominated for an Oscar for this, if my memory serves me right.
Yeah, I think you might be right on that. It's been a while since I've seen The Town, but to me, like Ben Affleck and Jeremy Renner, especially, were the highlights of that movie.
But in the scene, Ben Affleck walks into Jeremy Renner's place and he's like, I need a favor, and I cannot tell you what the favor is, nor can you tell anyone about it. But I need you to do something with me. And Jeremy Renner's character is like, whose car are we stealing? Like he just doesn't question any of it. He's just like, all right, I'm on board. What are we doing? I love that. I love the spirit of that.
Yeah, but yeah, Argo is a really good movie too. I don't think it would have been my personal pick for Best Picture. I think there's far better movies that year that I think were far more deserving of the Oscar, like Django Unchained or Life of Pi. But Argo is still a pretty good movie in its own right. It's an entertaining thriller. The premise, which it baffles my mind that this was based on true events, how they were able to make a fake movie to rescue those hostages. I thought that was a brilliant setup.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like you cannot make something like that up, but they sort of kind of did, and it was awesome. But let's save that discussion for another time. I also watched the Dungeons and Dragons movie from the year 2000. This movie was crap. It was crap from scene one, and it was crap all throughout. And I don't know what I was expecting from this. The one thing that made it even somewhat tolerable was Jeremy Irons, who was chewing every piece of scenery he could find. He was putting way too much energy into this. I don't know why, because the rest of the movie is garbage. The main hero is so dumb. Like we would be here all night if I were reviewing this movie, but I watched it because Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is out, and I have not seen it yet. I plan on it, but it was a bit of a busy weekend. But I will see it eventually. I just wanted a barometer of what we've gotten so far in Dungeons and Dragons, and it was not great. So
Yeah.
that's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah, I haven't seen the original Dungeons and Dragons movie, but I've heard of some of its infamousy. Uh, I got a good question for you, Ryan. Of the two really bad sci-fi fantasy movies, who gave the crazier hammy performance? Jeremy Irons in Dungeons and Dragons or Eddie Redmayne in Jupiter Ascending?
I'd say Jeremy Irons because while Eddie Redmayne had bursts of like it was like it was like hey
Yeah.
hey.
Yeah. I create life. and now I will destroy it.
Like he had moments of insanity rather than being that way throughout. Jeremy Irons just put his foot on the gas and he didn't let up throughout the whole thing. So I would go Jeremy Irons, like as by far and away. And the dude has no excuse. He was Scar in The Lion King. He's won an Oscar. He's won a Golden Globe. So he's a very accomplished actor. I don't know what mood they caught him in for this, but geez, it was not his best day. But again, that's another story for another time. I do plan on reviewing that movie on the channel before I do see Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. And then I saw Tetris. This was a new streaming movie on Apple TV Plus. That review is currently up on the channel if you all are so inclined. I thought the movie was very entertaining. It's one of those true story ones where you're like, how? But somehow it actually happened. It's very cliche in parts, especially the Russians. You might as well have replaced all their dialogue with "Welcome to the Gulag" and "Vodka," like just stuff like that. Like just have Bert Kreischer doing the Russia voice, and it would have been more subtle than this. But overall, I still really enjoyed it. Taron Egerton is the best part.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the film. I don't know when I'll be able to watch it because I currently don't have Apple TV Plus at the moment. But then again, it's cool to know that they're starting to do theatrical releases on some of their upcoming movies. It just was announced. They've announced a deal with Sony to release Ridley Scott's Napoleon movie in theaters, so that's promising.
Oh, I honestly forgot that that was even a thing. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But I ask all of you, what have you been watching lately? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read what you have to say. All right, well, Jacob, let's get into some Luke Cage coverage. We are nearing the end of season one. This was a pretty busy episode, I believe. This is season one, episode 11. As I pull it up. Here we go. So the episode is called Now You're Mine. In one bold move, a person from Luke's past puts Luke on the defensive. Misty is in dire straits, and Harlem's safety is in jeopardy. So, like I said, a lot of things going on here, and it seems like everything is coming. It's going to be a Luke versus Diamondback fight to close out the end of this. I think that's where they're going.
Yeah, definitely between what we've seen in this episode and what's been established beforehand. I thought this was another good episode. This one was a lot more action packed since we're dealing with a hostage situation in the nightclub. Some aspects of it reminded me a little bit of Die Hard, a little bit with the place being held up, and the only one that can actually do anything is Luke Cage and Claire in some instances. It was really entertaining. I was a little bit on edge. I wasn't sure if Misty was going to survive or not, but it's cool that she did. I'm glad that she's still around because she's like the only person who can verify that Luke Cage is innocent in all this, and so I'm excited to see the building blocks of the final payoff. Uh, the tension with Luke Cage and Diamondback is still really interesting. It was cool learning a little bit more of their fractured history and why he hates Luke Cage, and it's all because of jealousy, because of the history between the two, and then being half siblings, and then even the end where Luke Cage gets arrested. I know he's going to get out of that situation immediately. I mean, he's pretty much strong as still. He can break out of jail at any time, obviously, but uh, I'm excited to see where it's going to go. This has been a very consistent show. I've said in the past I was concerned when they killed Cottonmouth Mahershala Ali's character halfway through. I thought, oh, they might have taken a grave error there. I thought that was where the show was building up to, but it's been a wild ride after that, and they've somehow found a way through the Diamondback character and the Mariah character to still make the show engaging and still have a lot of really well acted character moments that keep the show fresh.
Yeah, no doubt. And shout out to Eric LeRae Harvey. Like he was just diabolical in this episode as Diamondback. And just some of the insults he was throwing, like at the mayor's at the representative, he called him Diet Obama. I don't know if
I
you
caught
caught
that. I thought that was hilarious.
like wow. And this came out in 2016, so that was still a pretty relevant thing. So
Yeah,
that was crazy to hear. And then
yeah.
he called Luke Cage like Miracle Whip or something like that. It was he his he just doesn't care anymore. And I think that's going to cost him. He's taking this way too personal because if I were him, I wouldn't do half of the stuff he does in this episode. But he sees red. He wants Luke Cage, like he wants him out off of this mortal coil forever. And and just in the monologue he gives about how his father never acknowledged him, but he acknowledged Carl, and it was just like he never gave him his name. When I heard that line, I was like, your name, Willis Stryker, is far more cooler than Carl Lucas. So like, what are you complaining about? And again, I understand why, but at the same time, it's like it feels like he's just being petty.
I think a little bit because I kind of agree. Luke Cage is a cooler name than Carl Lucas personally, but what's been fascinating about his character is we see that the more obsessed he is, the more he makes grave errors in his decision making, and I feel like when you're that deeply obsessed in hatred, it's eventually going to bite you in the butt in the end.
Yeah, but like you said, this season is honestly like I would consider this one into the very underrated part of I guess it's part of the MCU because no one talks about the show, and I honestly think more people should because halfway through the show, what we thought was the main villain is killed off, and then another more evil one is slated in, and it felt completely natural. It's honestly quite impressive how they did that.
Yeah, I actually agree because even when they did the swap, it's not like I know, even though I still defend Iron Man 3, even after the Mandarin twist, which was funny at first, the villain that replaced what was set up was not as interesting. What I liked about Luke Cage is you had a villain that was set up early that had his purpose, was killed off in a shocking way, and then you had an even more sinister villain that is just as memorable as what was already previously established. And this is a guy that replaced Mahershala Ali, one of the best actors working today. That's a huge compliment when your character is arguably a little bit more memorable than what Mahershala Ali did in the early half of the show.
Yeah, no doubt. This we've got two episodes left, so I'm crossing all my fingers and toes that this show sticks the landing on this season because we've been disappointed by that before, Jessica Jones season one. So here's to hoping that the landing is a good one. What did you all think of this episode? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to read what you have to say. All right, Jay, yep, let's buckle up. This is the main event. It's time to go over 27 Easter-based entertainments that aren't biblical epics. This is from avclub.com. It was written all the way back in 2012.
Okay.
So, Jacob, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, starting off with number one, it's called It's the Easter Beagle, Charlie Brown. Easter is a holiday oddly bereft of pop cultural artifacts and not. This is a Peanuts special, and it's described as kind of an offshoot of or a lesser version of It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. I try to remember if I even saw this because I'm a big Peanuts fan. There's a Peanuts book back there. I don't know. You all probably can't see it, but it's a big old treasury of the Peanuts comics. So I love the Peanuts. And I've seen It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown Christmas. I can't remember if I've seen the Easter special, and I don't think I have. Jacob, does this sound familiar to you?
I actually have seen the Easter special. In fact, I have the DVD of it in my collection.
All right, well,
It's uh,
what did you think?
it, It's pretty good. I think describing it as a lesser version of the Great Pumpkin might be a little bit accurate because it is very similar. Where instead of Snoopy pretending to be the Great Pumpkin, he pretends to be the Easter Beagle in this case. But it's still really entertaining. It still has a lot of your great Peanuts gags. You still got some uh, fun little music. You got some great animation, and you got some funny gags in the middle of it. Like my favorite is where you know Peppermint Patty wants to make her own Easter eggs, but then Marcy keeps messing him up. Like she makes like egg soup at one point and tries to toast the eggs, and just seeing Peppermint Patty's reaction is always hilarious. So yeah, Easter Beagle's pretty good. I've always liked it.
Now that you brought up the egg soup part, I know I've seen this one before. It's been a while, but I distinctly remember that part because Peppermint Patty freaks out. She's like, "Egg soup! You made egg soup!" And
Yes.
she was so mad about that. I remember that part. It's been a while since I have seen it, but I do remember liking it oddly. Well, next up on this list is Hop from 2011. This is, I believe, like the second movie Illumination ever made. I mean, Despicable Me came out in 2010, which was their first, and this came out in 2011. So this was Illumination's second film. Hopefully, I am right on that. This has Russell Brand as the Easter Bunny, and poor James Marsden has to suffer through this too. Jacob, what did you think if you've seen it?
I actually never saw Hop. Even in 2011, I saw a trailer. I'm like, this looks dumb. I don't know what they were thinking. Russell Brand voicing the Easter Bunny. Like, yeah, it just sounded like a disaster waiting to happen. And yeah, I've not heard good things on the film. And it's like one of the few Illumination films I still have yet to see.
Yeah, and the Easter bunnies live on Easter Island. Do you get it? Oh,
Mhm.
and these chicks try to like take over, and it's a whole thing. It's a weird freaking movie. I would love to see your reaction to it one day. But next on the list is Easter Parade from 1948. This was originally supposed to star Judy Garland and Gene Kelly, but Fred Astaire was coaxed out of retirement to take over for that. I've never seen it, heard of it. I've heard some good things. Jacob, I correct me if I'm wrong. Have you seen it?
I've seen it once. I saw it on TCM one time. Really good movie. It's mainly remembered for a lot of the musical numbers which Irving Berlin wrote, and there are some great tunes in that movie. And despite the age difference between the two actors, Judy Garland and Fred Astaire have great chemistry.
Yeah, and that this sounds interesting. I'll definitely have to check it out one day because I love musicals. I love Fred Astaire. I mean, that dude was a talent. I mean, I think we all can agree on that.
Oh yeah.
Well, next up is let's take a steep dip in quality just from what I've read here. Easter Bunny Kill Kill. This is from 2006. Yes, that is the actual title by the way.
Easter Bunny kill kill.
I directly I directly quote from the article. This sleazy, no budget, and less talent shocker is about a mentally challenged 16-year-old boy whose favorite holiday is Easter. As his mother explains, he wishes every day could be Easter because that's the day his father died. Um, alrighty then.
Okay.
After mom decides to leave the kid alone with her new boyfriend, a slimy thug who is first seen robbing a store and killing the clerk while wearing a bunny rabbit mask, the action proceeds with a series of lowlifes, hookers, disgruntled Mexican gardeners, and yes, a child. Um, yeah, the
Ooh,
yes, I'm sure you
oh,
all can put two and two together on that. This sounds like crap.
yeah.
This sounds horrible.
And I thought Silent Night, Deadly Night was bad.
Actually, I believe the article says it was a Christmas-themed horror film, 1984's Silent Night, Deadly Night, that moved and appalled Leonard Maltin to ask, "What's next? The Easter Bunny as a child?" You know,
Mhm.
that's what the article says. I kid you not.
Oh wow!
So next
We
up is
gotta thank Leonard Maltin for giving some wacko producer the idea.
well, next up is Critters 2, the main course. As far as post Gremlins comedy horror creature features go, Critters 2 is, well, it's one of them. That's the exact quote. The film flirts with the religious sanctity of Easter in a scene in which Scott Grimes and his family seek refuge as the pesky Krite aliens inside of a church. But then a man dressed in an Easter bunny costume is set upon by a flock of critters who hop inside of the suit and begin devouring him from the inside. Okay.
Okay, yeah. I've
Well,
I've heard of the Critters franchise, but I've never actually watched them. I didn't know there was an Easter theme in one of the sequels, so this is new news to me.
the more you know, I guess. Well, next up, let's take a hard right in quality. Yogi the Easter Bear. It's Easter time at Jellystone Park, and Ranger Smith is worried about a visit from the Supreme Commissioner, who names it the Supreme. Never mind. Who got the job by putting out forest fires with his bare hands. Wait, what? With his bare hands?
His bare hands.
Oh, dear God, Jacob. Oh, man. Um, so,
That was a bad pun.
so Life in the Movies listeners will remember one of our earliest episodes, and just a brief note, Jacob, we should do a Boomerang retrospective again. We did a Boomerang retrospective from Boomerang from Cartoon Network. It's one of my favorite TV networks. I watched a ton of it as a kid, like Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Johnny Quest, Josie and the Pussycats. I love all of them. William Hanna and Joseph Barbera are legends. So we should definitely do another Boomerang retrospective, Jacob. Do you agree?
Definitely agree.
Yeah, but I'm sort of curious to check out this Easter special, the Yogi the Easter Bear. I don't know if
Yeah.
this sounds amazing or terrible.
Uh Probably a little bit of both. But if anything, it's probably better than whatever that live action movie was with Dan Aykroyd.
No, that's true. I mean, poor guy who played Reverse Flash in The Flash. I can't think of his name right now. He's in a bunch of Hallmark stuff too, but he was dragged into that. Well, next up is A Family Circus Easter. This was based on the newspaper cartoon of the same name. This Easter, Billy has plans to help PJ find his first Easter egg. Dolly helps, but Jeffy wants to catch the Easter Bunny. I I actually read quite a few newspaper comics like Calvin and Hobbes, Zits, Baby Blues. Never heard of Family Circus, so this one just like whoo over my head.
Yeah, I can't comment too much on that. Doesn't look good to me.
Well, a little more sticking with the obscure, the Berenstain Bears Easter Surprise.
Ooh,
So, if you actually have been to any children's section in any library, there are a ton of Berenstain Bears books. Like, there's just a ton of them, more than we can, more than we know what to do with. But, uh, but but leave it to the Berenstain Bears and the other residents of Bear County to remind kids of Easter roots as a pagan holiday celebrating the beginning of the spring thaw. In this holiday special, the third of five intended to bring the beloved children's book characters to the small screen, spring simply refuses to come. How does that work?
okay.
Yeah, that's bizarre that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the Berenstain Bears. Like, I know there was. I remember reading some of the books as a kid and watching the animated show, but that one sounds weird.
A lot of these sound weird, to be honest. Next up is Davy and Goliath Happy Easter. This sounds like a TV show. Produced by Art Clokey of Gumby fame, Davy and Goliath featured the slow-paced stop-motion animated stories of a boy, Davy, and his dog, Goliath, learning the lessons of the Lutheran Church. Okay. Including this ironically titled Easter special revolving around the death of Davy's grandmother. Whoa!
I didn't know it was going to go in that direction.
I didn't either, bro. I think we
Oh,
should move right along.
like who? Like I don't know this show. When you said Davy and Goliath, I thought it was like a animated version with the Bible characters.
I
Like how does what does
how does
David and Goliath
number
have to do
one
with Easter?
number one, David and Goliath were like enemies. How
Yeah, and um, people and Easter people didn't celebrate that until after Jesus rose.
yeah, I
So that's like two different things.
that's Old Testament.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Well, next up is South Park, and there are two specials to this: The Passion of the Jew and the Fantastic Easter Special in 2004 and 2007, respectively. In The Passion of the Jew, Kyle is haunted by the violence of the Passion of the Christ and questions his own Jewish heritage because of the film's portrayal of Jews' role in Jesus' crucifixion. The storyline is eventually overtaken by Mel Gibson as insane and Cartman as Hitler plots, but Easter is front and center.
That's,
Wow.
that sounds like South Park.
It, I guess sadly it does. And the Fantastic Easter Special, uh, let's see, I lost my. Determined to get to the bottom of why he has to decorate Easter eggs, Stan uncovers the Hare Club for Men, spelled Hare, Club for Men, a secret society that protects the secret of Easter. What? like,
Okay.
like they have meetings?
All right. Yeah, that's weird. But yeah, I've seen bits and pieces of South Park in some parts of my life. I've never fully gotten into that style of humor. Some of that's a little off-putting to me. I get what they're trying to do, and I guess I kind of respect them for not caring about whether they're going to be canceled or not for their wild jokes and stuff. I give them credit for that at least, but
They are professional line steppers. That's what they are.
yeah, but that one just sounds insane. The Passion of the Christ parody one.
But it gets better. St. Peter was actually Peter Rabbit. Before Stan can be initiated, ninjas attack on behest of the Catholic Church. By the way, as a Catholic, we do not have ninjas. I can confirm that. And the and the episode becomes a spoof of the Da Vinci Code in a dark callback to the Passion of the Jew. Kyle is forced to kill Jesus so that Jesus in turn can be resurrected and save the day. It's one of the show's better episodes, and in conclusion, in which a rabbit named Snowball is ordained as the Pope.
I think just reading the synopsis is funnier than the execution of the
Oh my god.
that's
Oh,
wild.
this was a darker episode than I planned. But
Oh, all jokes aside, I actually really like The Passion of the Christ, by the way. I think it's a fantastic movie. Yeah, it's very violent, but I feel like the violence was necessary to show what Jesus was willing to go through for all of us. It's a
that is that is very true. I actually haven't seen it cover to cover. I've seen clips, and it is brutal. But Jim Caviezel, I mean, he was just awesome in that.
yeah, he's incredible in that movie.
Well, next up is The Simpsons, Simpsons Bible Stories. We disqualified straightforward biblical adaptations from this list simply because those selections would have overwhelmed any others. But surely there's room for The Simpsons' first attempt to port its Treehouse of Horror format to another holiday. The early Halloween episode aimed for 3 scary stories, while this one dumps The Simpsons and their friends into 4 different biblical stories about Adam and Eve, Moses in Egypt, King Solomon, and David and Goliath.
Oh my.
So yeah,
I did
that's
not
what
know
David
that
and
was a thing.
so yeah, that's what David and Goliath needed. Bart Simpson.
Oh no, it needed whenever it needed Homer Simpson going, "Don't
You ate the apple, Mark. Don't.
you run city to the world."
Oh man. Well, next up is Here Comes Peter Cottontail. This is a Rankin Bass holiday special based on a song. It isn't an origin story like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's a surreal stop-motion adventure that crams a reversed version of the usual holiday special format into the first 15 minutes. The Easter Bunny heir apparent Peter Cottontail, voiced by Casey Kasem, who voiced Shaggy Doo, or Shaggy Doo. What am I?
Shaggy too.
This episode is just making me lose my mind.
Shaggy
A Shaggy in the Scooby Doo show, among many other things, has to thwart a malicious holiday wrecking killjoy, in this case, a dour old rabbit named January Q. January Q Irontail, voiced by Vincent Price. Vincent Price
Wow.
voiced a rabbit in his career.
An evil rabbit.
That's low-key awesome.
Yes. I have never seen this special.
I
I feel
want to.
embarrassed to say that because I love Rankin Bass. I love a lot of their Christmas specials. I need to watch this ASAP just to see Vincent Price as an evil rabbit.
Let's get Jacob Collins on the phone. Let's get him involved in
Yes.
this. Well, next up is The First Easter Rabbit from 1976. The Easter Bunny origin story had to wait another 5 years, but Rankin Bass finally tackled it with his off-putting combination of the hyper-elaborate and wholly unnecessary. Why Easter Rabbit and not Easter Bunny? Best guess. The studio already had The Easter Bunny is Coming to Town in the works, but wanted something to fill the Easter special void until that production was completed. Although Rabbit features voices already familiar, including Burl Ives and Paul Frees, the plot is a bizarre amalgam of premises. When a young girl contracts scarlet fever, the doctor orders her mother to destroy all of her clothes and toys as a precaution against reinfection.
What? That's horrible.
But a
That's,
fairy, but a
what's the
fairy named
mentality of that mom? It's like, oh, child, you're so sick. I know what can make you feel better. I will burn all your clothes. I will burn all your toys. I will make you suffer and miserable. I will make your bedroom hell on earth.
oh, but a fairy but a fairy saves a stuffed rabbit, its name is Stuffy, from a fiery demise by bringing it to life and declaring it to be the first Easter rabbit, Shades of the Velveteen Rabbit. For added drama, there's a battle with an evil ice wizard, and Santa Claus is even brought into the picture, possibly to up the street cred of the holiday without incorporating any religious elements whatsoever.
As much as I love Reagan Bass, they can get really weird and nonsensical sometimes. Have you ever seen Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July?
No.
That one is bananas if you haven't seen it because they try to combine Christmas and the 4th of July in one movie. They cram like 20 storylines. It's because it's a feature film, not a TV special. They cram like 20 different storylines in the movie, and it's such a mess, but it's kind of entertaining to watch in all of its badness.
Yeah, well, that's what Chris Mania on this channel exists for, so I'm probably gonna have to watch it at some point. Well, next up is The Easter Bunny is Coming to Town. So this is completing the Rankin Bass trilogy. Rankin Bass took another whack at an Easter Bunny origin story by basically stuffing the holiday into a well-worn fabric of its Christmas special Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Like the earlier program, it begins with Fred Astaire's living doll man, mail carrier, promising to answer some of the questions in the letters addressed to the Easter Bunny, such as what's with the painted eggs and why does everyone get new clothes at Easter? What? That's a thing that happens?
Yeah, people wear nice clothes during Easter.
Oh, fair enough. The tale he relates begins in Kidville, a remote socialist hellscape populated entirely by children, where
What?
every where everybody shared everything and worshiped the Lord in their own way. The kids adopt a lost baby bunny named Sunny, who grows up to challenge Duchess Lily Longtooth, who runs the neighboring town. Lily has banned children from her fiefdom and makes everybody eat nothing but beans. Abetted by such helpers as Jugs, the famous little engine who could, lovable hobo Hallelujah Jones, and Gadzooks the bear, Sunny is able to overcome such formidable obstacles as Lily pouring melted butter on the railroad tracks. This movie came out in 1977, and I almost thought it came out in the 60s when a certain drug was a thing.
That's what it sounds like these people are on when they come up with some of these concepts. But it's kind of weird. You brought up Fred Astaire and the mail carrier. So was this technically a Easter version of Santa Claus is coming to town?
It's what it sounds like.
That's weird.
Well, next up is Here Comes Peter Cottontail, the movie from 2005. Strangely, the original Here Comes Peter Cottontail got a sequel in a different style, with a different cast and from a different production company more than 30 years later. The crudely CGI animated direct-to-DVD follow-up has Irontail, now apparently British, as he's voiced by Roger Moore. Yeah, James Bond's Roger Moore, teaming up with Jackie Frost, Molly Shannon, to steal the Spring of Spring, which powers the clock that powers the season. Peter Cottontail's tech-head son, voiced by Tom Kenny, just as irresponsible as his old man was back in the day, naively facilitates the theft, then spends the rest of the story trying to fix his mistake. The same character Danny Kaye voiced in the original, a narrator with weird color-based magical abilities, and Tom Bombadil levels of protagonist rescuing Deus Ex Machina magic is back, but he's morphed into a green-haired spastic clown voiced by Christopher Lloyd, where the Rankin Bass original is trippy and its surreal and expansive dreaminess. This one's trippy in that it's filled with bright colors, lots of motion, and an upbeat alterna pop seemingly rescued from a 90s remainder bin. It's harmless kids' entertainment unless you count leaving kids with a taste for gin blossoms-esque rock as doing them harm.
Oh wow. The
All right, few
Roger
more.
Moore and Christopher Lloyd signed on to this.
Apparently,
Whoa, that's crazy.
they
Great
apparently had
Scott.
apparently the James Bond and Back to the Future royalties were not enough. Next up is the Easter Egg Adventure from 2004. This ugly-looking, barely animated video feature may just be enough to make the heyday of Rankin Bass seem like a golden age. It's set in an idyllic community called Eggtown, where rabbits and chickens live together in harmony. How that works, I do not know. The big event of the year is Egg Day, when the kids report to the local hatchery to gather and paint the fresh eggs while a contingent of designated rappers, spelled Rappers, perform a hip hop number designed to enhance the hen's production because nothing says Easter like hip hop, am I right or am I right?
Oh,
When some bad animals from outside the gated community break into the hatchery and steal the eggs, it's up to such local heroes as Good Gracious Grasshopper, Boring Benedict Bunny, and Horrible Harriet Hare to save the day. Who made these names?
I thought Gadzooks the bear was bad.
Jeez. Though they're too
Uh,
shy to Harriet and Benedict are in love, though they're too shy to admit it. And something or other keeps getting in their way. In one scene, the two of them go on a picnic and are about to kiss when a bird poops on Benedict's nose. in in the end, they do finally get together. Even though he's drawn so out of shape and so much older than her, it's like the woodland version of Salman Rushdie and Padma Lakshmi. I do not know who those people are.
so, uh, so it sounds like there's no plot. The conflict involves bird poop, but bird poop doesn't matter because I love you and I want to marry you.
All right, so next up on the list is a movie. I don't know if I haven't seen it, but it's fairly well known. Steel Magnolias.
Oh, I've seen it once.
Yeah, apparently it's an Easter movie. Here, Easter doubles as a symbol for spring and the beginning of new life. The film opens on Easter with a small town southern wedding that leads to a birth that leads to a death. So that's interesting. There's a lot of good names in that one.
Yeah, I honestly forgot that Easter was the setting of Steel Magnolias, but it's a very well acted movie and it's got a good cast. It's got Dolly Parton, it's got Shirley MacLaine, it's got uh, Julia Roberts is in it in the film as well, and it's a really sad watch. The more it dives into the characters' lives, and especially one who has quite a bit of health issues, and so. Oh, Sally Fields also in the movie. I forgot to mention her. She's great. I think Sally Fields is the standout of the movie, honestly. But it's a pretty good movie. I'm not really the target demographic for it, but I still enjoyed the film mainly for the cast.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to watch it one day. I remember in The Big Bang Theory there was a joke about Steel Magnolias getting a sequel is called Steel Magnolias 2, Even Steelier. Well, next up is Bob Hope's Easter Vacation in the Bahamas. This was in 1989. Wow. Return with us to those thrilling days when Bob Hope was alive, more or less well, and still had enough fans to warrant a couple of TV specials a year. While Hope's Christmas specials are fondly remembered, his other efforts have mostly faded into obscurity. For instance, his 1989 Easter Vacation in the Bahamas, which has fallen so far out of memory that it doesn't even earn a mention in Wikipedia's list of Hope's TV appearances. Thanks to YouTube, however, viewers can enjoy a trip back to a bygone era when someone apparently convinced Hope's producers of LaToya Jackson's hipness, since she clearly positioned as the special's only effort to appeal to the kids. With with the other guest stars, including Barbara Mandrell, Tony Randall, and Andy Williams. Sounds like sounds like Bob Hope just invited his friends for this one.
Yeah, I didn't know he did an Easter special, and yeah, it sounds like an easy paycheck though, considering it just brought his friends, got somebody to try to appeal to the kids. Sounds kind of a mess to me.
Yeah, well, Hope's monologue feels as old as the Easter story itself, given the inclusion of jokes about Ayatollah Khomeini and Ted Turner's tendencies towards colorization, but there's still something about his well-worn delivery that causes the proceedings to teeter towards timelessness. Sounds weird. Not as weird as the three others that we've talked about in this.
Yeah, that was weird.
Passion of the Jew, Jacob. Passion of the Jew.
Oh, no, don't get me started.
Number 19, Patti Smith Group Easter, 1978. Patti Smith's haunting dirge-like title song brings down the curtain on an album saturated in religious imagery. This sounds more like music than anything else. But I don't know, maybe we should skip that one.
Yeah, I don't know much about that. I've heard of the group, but can't really comment on it.
It seems like these other ones are not necessarily movies. These seem like other related things. I think that's enough for one night. I think we should cap it there.
Yeah,
I'll leave the link in the description for the article if you want to read the rest, because boy howdy, I think even regardless, I'm tapping out because
yeah, yeah. You kind of lost me after the Passion of the Jew and the
oh
those
god.
Rankin Bass ones.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed us losing our minds on this episode, because there's a couple of these that honestly I want to watch for a morbid sense, because A, I had never heard it, and B, it just seems like a time where like it would just be like, just put it on there. No one cares. Like just a cavalier attitude, so to speak. Well,
Yeah, I definitely want to watch the Rankin Bass ones for sure.
yeah, well, thank you all. Well, that's the end of another episode. Thank you all for suffering with us. Thank you so much for watching, Jacob. It is a privilege doing this and laughing along with me on these insane trips down memory lane. But it is a privilege to work with you. You're the best co-host. Tell the people where they can find you.
They can find me on Letterboxd, Twitter, Facebook, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. I've been mainly doing live streams since I've started school again. I just recently did a What I've Watched live stream this past Saturday where I talked about some of the recent movies and one TV show that I've watched. And I will be repurposing them into smaller reviews in the next couple of weeks. I think videos I'll be dropping this week. I'll be doing some recent Peter Bogdanovich reviews on one of his TV movies, Hustle, along with the Tom Petty documentary that he directed that I recently watched called Running Down a Dream. I got a celebrating Disney video I'll be dropping this week for the really terrible comedy Meet the Deedles from 1998, along with probably The Woman King will probably drop this week as well. So be on the lookout for those videos coming soon. I'm going to start my Mission Impossible series real soon. I'm going to get quite a few people collabing with me on those movies in the run up to Dead Reckoning Part 1. There's some exciting stuff on the channel going forward.
Yes, I'll leave the links to both of Jacob's channels and his Twitter linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe there. As for this channel, because it is Holy Week and because the movie release schedule kind of just did this for some random reason, by the time this drops, I should have my review for the Super Mario Brothers movie out, because it's coming out on Wednesday, which is weird, but you know what? Hey, I'm going to take it. And so that review will be up, and I'll also be reviewing Air. So stay tuned for both of those. And if you like the video, please be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below. And if you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. For Jacob Martin, my name is Ryan Cam. See you in the next one. Happy Easter. You take care.